There's a quiet kind of heartbreak that doesn't arrive with slammed doors or shattered plates. It arrives in silence, in the space between two people sitting on the same couch, staring at different screens, in the way her laughter slowly stops reaching him, in the way his words begin to feel heavier in his own mouth. Arman used to know the sound of Leena's laugh better than his own heartbeat. It was the first thing he fell in love with. Not her face, though she was beautiful. Not her voice, though it was soft and melodic. It was the way she laughed when he said something stupid and half serious at the same time. The way she'd lean into him like he was the safest place in the world. In the beginning, she used to look at him like he was made of something rare. When he spoke about his plans starting a small design studio, building something of his own, she listened with wide eyes. "You're going to do it," she would say. "I believe in you." And he believed in himself because she did. But love rarely collapses in a single moment. It erodes. The first crack was so small Arman almost missed it. They were in the kitchen one evening. He had forgotten to pick up her dry cleaning. It had slipped his mind after a long day at work. She sighed, not loudly, not dramatically, just a thin exhale through her nose. "You're so careless sometimes," she said. He froze for half a second. The word careless lingered. It didn't feel playful. It didn't feel light. It felt like a label. "I'm sorry," he replied quickly. "I'll get it first thing tomorrow." She shrugged and turned away. It was small, almost nothing, but something in him shifted. He didn't ask why the word bothered him. He didn't tell her it did. He told himself he was being sensitive. That's how it starts. Not with cruelty, with allowance. Weeks passed. The sighs came more often. The corrections followed. He would tell a story at dinner with friends, and she would interrupt. "That's not how it happened, Arman." She would laugh as she said it, but the laughter didn't feel shared. It felt like it was aimed. Once, at a gathering, he mentioned he was thinking about leaving his job to focus on his studio idea. The table went quiet in interest. Before he could explain further, Leena smirked. "He's been thinking about that for 2 years, she said. "Don't hold your breath," everyone laughed. He laughed too. He told himself it was harmless, that she was just being honest, that he shouldn't be so proud. But that night, lying next to her in the dark, he stared at the ceiling and replayed the moment over and over. Not the laughter, the look on her face. It wasn't playful. It was dismissive. He started speaking less after that. When she asked about his day, he shortened his answers. When ideas formed in his mind, he kept them there. It felt safer not to risk that smirk, not to risk that quiet slicing sentence that turned his excitement into something foolish. The strangest part was that he loved her just as much, maybe more, so he tried harder. He bought flowers on random Tuesdays, planned weekend trips, cooked dinners. He thought if he could just bring back the warmth, the old look in her eyes would return. Instead, she grew sharper. One Sunday afternoon, he was resting on the couch after cleaning the apartment. She walked past him, glanced at the television, and said, "Must be nice to relax all the time." He blinked. "I just finished cleaning the whole place." She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't say you didn't." But the tone did. He felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the urge to defend himself, the urge to argue. But stronger than both was the fear of conflict. "I'll take the trash out too," he said quietly. She didn't respond. That was the day something inside her shifted. Because in that moment, she watched him fold, not angrily, not dramatically, softly, and she felt it. It wasn't that she wanted to dominate him. It wasn't that she woke up wanting to belittle the man she once adored. It was something subtler, more unsettling. She no longer felt anchored by him. Every time she pushed even lightly and met no resistance, a quiet disappointment settled in her chest. She didn't want a servant. She didn't want a child. She wanted the man who once spoke about his dreams like they were inevitable. The man who teased her back. The man whose voice had weight. Instead, she felt like the louder one, the sharper one, the one steering the emotional direction of the relationship, and it exhausted her. One evening, they argued in the parking lot of a grocery store. Nothing major. He had forgotten to grab an item again. "You never pay attention," she snapped. "I do," he replied, his voice trembling. "I just forget sometimes." She stepped closer. "Then try harder." Something in him finally cracked, not in anger, but in clarity. "I'm not your employee," he said. His voice was calm, but steady in a way it hadn't been in months. "And I'm not careless. I forget things. So do you. But don't talk to me like I'm beneath you." The air shifted for the first time in a long time. He didn't apologize. He didn't over-explain. He just stood there. Lena's mouth opened slightly, then closed. The sharpness in her eyes flickered into something else, surprise, maybe, or relief. They drove home in silence. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, just as he had many nights before. But her thoughts were different. She remembered the man she fell in love with, the one who had boundaries without arrogance, the one who made her feel small in the best way, not diminished, but protected, contained. Safe. Somewhere along the way, she had begun testing him without realizing it. Little comments, small jabs, not to destroy him but to feel his edges. And each time he dissolved, she felt more alone. The next morning, she made coffee and sat across from him at the table. "I've been hard on you," she said quietly. He didn't rush to reassure her. "Yes," he replied. Not cruel, not bitter, just honest. Tears welled in her eyes, not because he accused her, but because he didn't. "I don't know why I do it," she admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying everything, and then I get resentful." "Then tell me that," he said. "Don't chip away at me." For the first time in months, they weren't playing roles. Not dominant and submissive, not critic and appeaser, just two flawed people sitting in the truth. Healing wasn't instant. Respect doesn't reappear overnight like a switched light. It rebuilds slowly, through moments. The next time she interrupted him mid-story, he placed a gentle hand on the table and said, "Let me finish." She nodded. The next time she made a cutting joke in front of friends, he looked at her not angrily, but firmly and said, "That's not fair." She squeezed his hand under the table. Something returned between them, not the blind sweetness of the beginning, but something steadier, more adult, more real. And here's the part no one talks about. Respect isn't about control, it's about self-possession. Arman didn't become louder. He didn't become aggressive. He didn't threaten to leave. He simply stopped abandoning himself to keep the peace. And when he stopped shrinking, she stopped expanding in ways that neither of them liked. Love, they learned, cannot survive where self-respect is absent. It becomes parental, managerial. Cold. But when do people stand upright, neither towering nor collapsing, something beautiful happens. They meet eye to eye again. Months later, he told her about his studio idea once more. This time when he finished, she didn't smirk. She smiled. "Okay," she said. "Let's plan it properly." He smiled back not because she approved, but because he would have pursued it either way. And that was the difference. There will always be drizzles in love, small tensions, missteps, human flaws, but a relationship doesn't drown from the rain. It drowns when one person keeps dissolving to avoid the storm. And sometimes, the most heartbreaking thing a man can do isn't to lose the woman he loves, it's to lose himself while trying to keep her.